So if we'll conceal the poll and allow me to share my screen right now, we're going to jump into Premiere Rush. Okay, and so obviously we're not going to take a complete tour of Premiere Rush. And by the way, you don't even need my tour because Adobe and this new generation of application has invested a whole lot in what they call the first mile. And so right now I'm going to click on Help. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to click on Help. I'm going to click on, there we go. I'm going to click on Help in Premiere Rush, and I'm going to click on Start Tour Again. And if you open up Premiere Rush for the first time, you get this guided tour that literally walks you through the steps of creating and editing a project. So if my screen is catching up, and in the lower left-hand corner is a blue sort of dialog box that says Name Your Project. And we're going to do this. We're going to follow the instructions for now, and we're going to name the project Ecotourism. We're going to maybe role play and imagine that this is a class on environmental science. And then it's teaching us. It says select media, choose at least 3 videos for your project. And at this point, I'm going to exit out this tour. But I just wanted to show you that what Adobe has done is invested a lot of resources in studying user experiences, especially novices and beginners, so that it's harder to click on the wrong thing. And that if you want to teach yourself Adobe Premiere Rush, I have a whole bunch of tutorials that I'm going to point you to at the end. But this embedded tutorial, which is called the tour, is wonderful in itself. I'm going to end that tutorial, and I'm going to restart a new project. I'm going to go File, New Project to create a new project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to role play as if, you know, I'm creating what we called earlier a video research paper. And so I've got some assets that I've put together. I've got an interview with a professor, and then I've got what we'll call B-roll, which is sort of scenic footage of from a drone shot. We have some ecotourists getting on a boat. We have a boat itself, and we have a guy snorkeling. We have some pictures of beach traffic, as well as some music. And so if there's not too big of a lag, you'll notice that it has numbers associated with each of the assets or film clips that I've just picked on. These assets are in a particular folder in my Creative Cloud files. And down in the bottom hand corner, there are all these thumbnails. It's starting to give me the message about how video editing works. It's actually kind of teaching novices and beginners the DNA or the structure of the way video editing works as you're in the process of making something for the first time. It's showing you how these things are going to line up in a sequence. In the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to click the Create button. It's going to take a second to process the media, but what were thumbnails fly off the timeline at the beginning and become this timeline itself. Now, I have tutorials that will explain everything you need to know about this timeline. I'm just going to give you a quick overview, which is that, you know, there are in the top right-hand corner are all these different editing tools, and all you have to do is hover your mouse on top of them, and they're not just named. There's actually little animated videos that show you how that particular tool works. And if you've ever worked in a complex application like Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign or in Premiere Pro, the interface is intimidating. It's overwhelming in its complexity. This, to me, is calming. It's zen. It makes me feel good about what I'm about to embark on, and it makes me feel like I can do this, like I can participate. What we're going to do now is I'm going to show you 3 sort of essential moves that you need to make for most what we'll call academic videos. You know, if we want to think of these as, for lack of a better term, audio visual research papers. What is the fundamental nature of that kind of work? What's the fundamental nature of academic work as opposed to making videos about your snorkeling trip to the Philippines? what's the difference between a film that's about ecotourism in the Philippines and vacation footage? And so what's different about that is it's going to be based upon expert evidence, expert evidence. And so in order for my students to learn the moves they need to make to do this kind of editing, I've gone ahead and I've created this little sample clip of me role playing as if I am an environmental science professor. And I'm going to play this clip, and I know it's going to lag, but you can hear it and at least listen to it, and that's going to be important in terms of what we're talking about today. So here we go. We're going to play this clip. Again, I'm role playing, and listen for the places where I've intentionally put things that need to be edited or changed or deleted. Sorry, I'm going to mute that audio for a second. Here we go.
In this video, I will be role-playing as if I am a professor of marine science and an expert on something called ecotourism. I need to make this very clear. I am not. This is for demonstration purposes only. And so we'll pretend that the interview actually begins now.
Okay, and so I'm going to want to get rid of that first piece that's a disclaimer. I'm going to click a button called Expand Audio. And if your screen is pretty big, you can actually see that there's this gap here, right at the place where I'm going to need to make an edit. It's almost like a missing tooth. And I found, and I hope I'll have time to come back to this, that I have a more efficient editing this kind of expert interview talking head video if I look at the shape of the sound waves more than I look at the shape of the person on the screen. And so I need to make a cut right there. I need to get rid of that first point, that first part. And there are two different ways to make cuts in Premiere Rush. One is to grab a handle, like I'm going to here on the left-hand side, and just drag it. And this is one of the things that makes this so powerful and easy. When I release the mouse, everything snaps back into magical magnetic alignment, and it's not the case exactly with more sophisticated editing techniques. Sorry, with more sophisticated video editors. Now, I've intentionally put a mistake in this video, and if you're looking at the screen right now and you're following what I'm saying, look at the shape of the sound wave and try to estimate where you think that mistake is. In other words, where do you see something that looks like missing teeth? We can see right here, there seems to be something wrong. And so I'm going to advance the playhead to that spot. I'm going to hit play, and we're going to listen to this intentional flub up that I inserted in this point.
A relatively new way to raise awareness of local impact on the global environment is ecotourism. Well, I don't know if I should say this part, but I guess I will anyway. In the past, tourism was often associated with wasteful consumption.
Okay, and so the reason I intentionally put that mistake in there is because to me, this is the nature of this kind of editing. This is what you spend most of your time doing. You have an interview with an expert. We find out they don't think all the time in complete sentences. If if they're editing their Zoom class, maybe their dogs are barking or someone comes to the door or a baby's crying or something interrupts it. And so editing this kind of academic video is very much a matter of sort of cutting out the mistakes and the places that aren't as tightly composed, and then putting them back together so that somebody seems like they're really together. And as I say that, my dog starts barking, of course. And so I'm going to use the scissors now. I'm going to put the playhead here where I can see the flub up begins. I'm going to click the scissors once. It's going to split the clip into two pieces. And then over here is where it picks up again after the mistake is over. And I'm going to click the scissors again. And so this piece in the middle, I want to delete. And I can hit the trash can to delete it, or I can just hit the delete key on the keyboard. I'm going to hit the trash can. And now it's gone. And this, again, will probably lag, but you'll get a sense now I've solved one problem of excising something that isn't smoothly composed. but I've created a new problem, and let's see if we can figure out what that is. I'm going to play across that transition now.
A relatively new way to raise awareness of local impact on the global environment is ecotourism. In the past, tourism was often associated with wasteful consumption.
And so what's the problem I have now? Problem I have now is my eyes roll. You can tell that there's a mistake. And this ruins in many ways the credibility of the speakers, because all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe they're not such an expert anymore. They're manipulating this video. And so we're going to use Hollywood magic, and we're going to put the playhead exactly on the word ecotourism. So we're going to play.
Awareness of local impact on the global environment is
E. You can see my mouth actually forming the word E as in ecotourism. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this video clip of ecotourists up to a video channel on top of that one to where that playhead is. And I'm clicking holding, and I'm going to release it now. And so what we have here is right here in the middle of the screen where you see this orange vertical space, this orange vertical line. That's the place where we made the cut. And what happened then is once we pulled that piece out, you could see my eyes rolling. You could see that there was a jump from the piece that didn't belong anymore. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to cover that up. And what we did is we took this other clip that you can see that's kind of small of ecotourists, and we put that as sort of a bridge across that clip, so that if the playhead were now to go down this, it would say, one way people are dealing with this is through ecotourism, and you don't hear the flub up anymore. And as soon as I say the word ecotourist, now you're going to see ecotourists, right? And the idea here is what's called B-roll. So when doing this kind of academic film, what I found is easiest, especially for novice and beginners, is to get what's called the A-roll, or the main track, the main audio track, as a matter of fact. Get that right. You don't worry about how it looks. You edit it for the integrity of the linguistic track or the verbal track. And once that sounds right, then you can easily layer the visual track on top of that. And if you've never edited a video before, the way this works is there are layers of video track, of visual track, and layers of audio track. And so the image you're looking at right now, there are two layers of visual or video tracks stacked on top of each other. And this video of these people climbing onto a boat is what you might call the B track or the B roll. When Hollywood filmmakers make movies, there are typically two directors. There's the main director, who's with the talent, who's working with all the actors, and that person is getting paid a lot of money because they're the main person. And then there's a second unit, someone who's out shooting landscapes and B-roll and car chases and all the other pieces. And so what happens is when you get into the editing booth, you need lots of footage and lots of material to work with, so that you can make these kinds of edits and tell these kinds of stories blended together. And so it's much more than just covering up mistakes, where you have the A roll on the bottom and the B roll on top going across that piece that was excised out. What you're really doing is you're composing a visual narrative that complements the audio or linguistic narrative. So these things are talking together. And that's where movie magic really happens. And that's where you can take your normal talking head expert professor and make them seem like a superstar, or anyone you interview, when you can take out their naturally human moments and then layer these other pieces in. That can only be done with multi-track editing. That is easy and intuitive and has a relatively flat learning curve. And so if this were a live interface, I could drag all these different pictures up to different parts in this track. So in a minute, we're going to talk about people, this track down here towards the end of it starts talking about people living healthier lifestyles who are interested in ecotourism. And so I'm going to drag this picture of this very healthy looking person snorkeling on top of that place. So we're not just hearing a talking head all the time. We're getting a visual narrative that illustrates and complements the audio narrative. And so the three moves we are talking about today. The first is this bridge, this B-roll bridge, as you might call it. Move number two, and an amazing feature of Premiere Rush, is what's called auto ducking. And what this does is it allows you to put in a soundtrack, and with one click of the button, it'll automatically duck or lower the sound whenever it sees or senses that someone's trying to talk. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this. I'm going to play this where the background music is competing with the foreground music.
The beaches and giving animals. What are the ways that we can all work together to better?
So you can hear how the music is competing with the vocal track. What I'm doing right now is I'm selecting the music track, and then I'm going over to the audio tool and the audio pane, and there's a button there called Auto Duck, and I've just clicked it, and it automatically knows when a human voice is talking. And now listen to the difference between what we heard before and what we hear now.
We can all work together to better understand and promote environmental science.
And so with a click of a button, we've done what is taken my documentary film students over 20 years, literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of editing and gnashing of teeth. And this can be done with a swipe of a finger now on a mobile device. And again, when you're in the interface, you don't have to remember what these things do. All you have to do is hover your mouse on top of that, and Rush will tell you what that button does, right? And then, so in that pane is the auto duck feature. All you've got to do is click the music track, click the auto duck track, and it automatically does this. And so if I were to rearrange the A roll, it would automatically readjust and automatically duck. The last move we're going to try to show you in this is something else that has taken my students hundreds and hundreds of hours over the years, which is basically a one-touch voiceover feature. And so we're going to, and I don't expect you'll be able to see this, I'm going to put the playhead at the end of the project where my bibliography is going to come up, and I'm going to click the plus button in the top left-hand corner. Up pops three options: add a title, add media, add voiceover. If I were to click on add voiceover right now, we get a red button down in the audio track, and all I have to do is one click that red button and say,
many people's lives and lifestyles.
To find out more information, go to ecotourism.com. And it at that point where I put the playhead, boom, it's just going to drop that voiceover right in place. And so I'm going to quickly go through the editing tools in the top right-hand corner, just so you know where the other basic functions are: titles, transitions, color editing, speed, so you can do slow motion or fast motion, audio, and then cropping and rotating and transforming and scaling. And again, these are all fairly self-explanatory in terms of how they work. And so, things that really slow us down, things that really get in our way with teaching and learning, are greatly accelerated in this incredibly intuitive interface. And so, of the three moves, we're ready for the final poll. Of the three moves that I just demonstrated, which were well, they're going to be on the pool. Which of those three moves do you think is going to be most valuable to you? Multi-track editing in a B-roll bridge, automatic audio ducking, or one-click voiceover? And while that's happening, I want you all to please click on the link to download the handout and I'm going to show you where that handout will take you next.
Getting some votes. Leading is multi-track editing.
I think I might have oversold that one. Actually, no, that to me is the real big reason, is to have that kind of functionality. So there have been, and there are hundreds, there are dozens of um, of video editing solutions out there. Other than all the advantages we've just talked about, one of the reasons I wouldn't ever let my students use sort of simplified video editors in the past was because they were so simplified that you couldn't do that basic move that I just did. And so everything is laggy today. The handout that I'm trying to download has links to tutorials that cover everything that I've just covered in extreme detail. So if you scroll down to the bottom of this list, there is a link to Adobe Premiere Rush video editing tutorials. And if you click that link, it takes you into something called Adobe Education Exchange. You don't have to have an Adobe Creative Cloud account to access Education Exchange. It's designed for instructors and instructional designers. And in there, you will find 4 Adobe Premiere Rush editing tutorials. One that's beginner, one that's introduction, and then novice, intermediate, and advanced. And everything that I just described there is fully documented with script, with captions, and with each move fully documented. And so let's take a quick look at our poll as we're coming to the top of the hour. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think I did. Melissa, what were the breakdowns on the different features?
Yeah, so we actually have another tie. So 45% with multi-track editing, and then we've got 27% for both automatic audio ducking and one-click voiceover. I'm a big fan of the audio ducking personally.
Have you been using that one?
Yeah.
Okay, and so in the chat, are there any functions or features that I didn't cover that are really important to you? Again, we have lots of tutorials to document all those things, but if there's a really burning question, we might talk about an Adobe Rush solution to something. So if you have a question about Premiere Rush, go ahead and send it in the chat pod. I can't see the chat pod, so Melissa, you're gonna have to read out. Oh, there it is. There's a link to the chat pod.
Yeah, thank you guys. Also, if questions are coming in, thank you guys for your patience. I know sometimes technology. Todd and I actually tested all this morning, and it worked out. And then, of course, yeah.
That's what you get for really planning. So I don't see any questions. That means you did a fantastic job, Melissa. I did a fantastic job. Thank you to everyone for being with us today. Do download that handout and follow up there, and email me at ttaylor@adobe.com. On that list is also a link to my portfolio, which includes lots of resources, including the free OER online textbook that we should also put into the chat pod, even though it's on that list of resources, which brings all these things together, which talks about teaching and learning in these environments. And so it's out there for free. It's available. I made it for instructors like the ones who worked in my writing program, who were beginners and who were looking for a place to start. And so I'm going to quickly paste that into the chat pod. I want to thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with me. I love talking about Premiere Rush, and more than that, I love really talking about this kind of transformative student work, because to me, it's the student work itself that is the beginning and the ending of all the motivation that I have to invest in these experiences. And I thank you for the investment you made today on behalf of your students. Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. Click the link in the description below to explore more free online professional development, and click the link on screen to subscribe to the channel for more videos.